The alarm went off at the worst possible time. Captain John Harper was 3 days into a 6-day journey across the outer veil, that empty stretch of space where nobody in their right mind wanted to be. His ship, the Wandering Star, was a cargo freighter. Nothing fancy, just a reliable vessel that had carried medical supplies, building materials, and sometimes passengers across human space for the last 8 years. Lisa Grant looked up from her navigation console. Her fingers stopped moving across the controls. "John, we've got something." "Pirates?" John asked. He'd been drinking coffee and now he set the cup down carefully. "Don't think so. It's a distress signal. Automated. Weak, but it's there." John walked over to her station and looked at the readings. The signal was faint, flickering like a dying candle. It was coming from a sector about 2 hours off their current route. He rubbed his jaw, thinking. Company policy was clear about distress signals in the outer veil. Most of them were traps. Pirates would disable a ship, set it to broadcast an SOS, and wait for some good-hearted fool to show up. Then they'd strip your cargo and leave you floating in space if you were lucky. "Could be a trap," John said. "Could be," Lisa agreed. She turned in her chair to face him. But what if it's not? That was the question, wasn't it? John had been a captain for 12 years. Before that, he'd served in Earth's merchant marine. He'd seen the worst of people and the best of them. The galaxy was a dangerous place, especially for humans. They were still the new kids, still trying to prove they belonged among the older species who'd been traveling the stars for thousands of years. "Wake up the crew," John said finally. "Tell them we're making a detour." Lisa smiled. "You're a good man, John Harper." "I'm probably an idiot," he replied, but he was smiling too. The Wandering Star changed course. The crew of 7 gathered in the common area. John explained the situation. Some looked worried. Others looked ready for whatever came next. That was the thing about his crew. They weren't heroes. They were just regular people trying to make a living. But they were good people. 2 hours later, they found the source of the signal. It was a ship, but not like any human vessel. The design was elegant, all smooth curves, and strange angles that seemed to shift when you looked at them from different positions. But elegant or not, the ship was dying. Pieces of the hull had been torn away. Scorch marks covered the surface. One entire section was just gone, open to space. "Life signs?" John asked. "One," Lisa said. "Faint. Whatever hit them hard." "Weapons hot," John ordered. "Just in case, but let's go in slow and careful." They approached the damaged vessel. No pirates appeared, no ambush, just silence and the slow spin of a dying ship. John suited up and took 2 crew members with him. They crossed the empty space between the ships and entered through a torn section of hull. Inside was worse than outside. Bodies floated in the corridors. The aliens were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Their clothes were simple, practical. These weren't warriors. Whatever had happened here, it had been one-sided. They found the survivor in what looked like an engineering bay. She was slumped against a console, one arm badly burned. When she saw them, she didn't reach for a weapon. She just watched them with those huge dark eyes. "We're here to help," John said slowly, knowing his translator would convert his words. The alien nodded weakly. "Valeth," she said, touching her chest. Then she pointed at John. "Human?" "Yeah, I'm John. We picked up your distress signal." "Kelvara," the alien said, then coughed. Blue blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. They got her back to the Wandering Star. Their medical bay wasn't designed for alien physiology, but Lisa had some basic training, and between the ship's medical database and Kelvara's weak instructions, they managed to stabilize her. It took 6 hours of careful work. When Kelvara could talk again, she told them what happened. Her people were the Valeth. They were explorers and scholars, not fighters. They'd been on a peaceful research mission when they encountered ships from the Krahan Dominion. The Krahan were expanding their territory. They didn't ask permission, they didn't negotiate. They just took what they wanted. "They destroyed us," Kelvara said quietly. "I tried to send warnings, to activate the emergency beacon. But they damaged everything. My crew. She closed her eyes. All gone. We can try to fix your ship, John offered. Kelvara shook her head. Too much damage. The core is failing. It will explode in a few days. Then you'll come with us. We'll get you to the nearest station. Why? Kelvara asked. She looked genuinely confused. Why help me? Your species and mine have no alliance, no trade agreements. You gain nothing. John thought about how to answer that. Finally, he just shrugged. Because you needed help. That's reason enough. They spent 3 days reaching the nearest neutral station. During that time, Kelvara told them more about her people. The Valith had been traveling space for over 10,000 years. They valued knowledge and peace above all else. They had no armies, no weapons of war. In a galaxy full of predators, they survived by being useful, by staying out of conflicts, by making themselves valuable to everyone and threatening to no one. The galaxy is not kind to the peaceful, Kelvara said sadly. The strong take what they want. The weak survive by being clever or by being ignored. Sounds like Earth before we got into space, Lisa said. Some things don't change. At the station, Kelvara prepared to leave them. She was heading back to her homeworld. Other Valith would come for her. Before she left, she pressed something into John's hand. It was a small crystal, perfectly clear, but with light somehow trapped inside it. Coordinates, she said. To my world. If your people ever need help, bring this. The Valith do not forget kindness. John tried to give it back. You don't owe us anything. Perhaps not, Kelvara said. But I give this anyway. The galaxy does not reward kindness, Captain Harper. The Cran will remember your interference. They do not forgive. Be careful. We'll be fine, John said, though he felt a cold touch of worry. Kelvara touched his shoulder gently. I hope so. You are a good person. Your species is young, but perhaps you will teach the galaxy something it has forgotten. Then she was gone, disappearing into the crowds of the station. John looked at the crystal in his hand. It was warm, pulsing gently with inner light. He put it in his pocket and headed back to his ship. They had a delivery to make, and they were already behind schedule. He didn't think much about the crystal or Kelvara's warning. That was his first mistake, because the Cran Dominion never forgot anything and they were already watching. 4 months passed before the Cran came, 4 months of routine cargo runs and quiet nights in space. John Harper had almost forgotten about Kelvara and her warning. Almost, but not quite. The crystal she'd given him stayed in his quarters, sometimes catching the light and reminding him of that encounter in the outer veil. The first attack hit New Boston Colony on the edge of human space. It was a mining settlement, home to about 15,000 people. Families, workers, people just trying to build a life on the frontier. The Cran came without warning. 6 warships dropped out of hyperspace and began bombardment immediately. No communication. No demands. Just destruction. The colony's defense platforms managed to take down 1 ship before they were overwhelmed. By the time human military vessels arrived, the Cran were gone and New Boston was burning. 5,000 dead. The rest evacuated, their homes and lives reduced to rubble and ash. Then came the message. It was broadcast across every human channel, every frequency impossible to block or ignore. The face that appeared was reptilian, covered in dark green scales. Red eyes stared out with cold intelligence. This was Warlord Thraknor, commander of the Krahan expansion fleet. Humans, the warlord said, his voice like gravel grinding together. You interfered in Cran business. You sheltered our prey. You think you can defy the Dominion without consequences? He leaned closer to the camera. This is only the beginning. Every human colony, every station, every world will burn until you learn your place. The Krahan Dominion does not forgive. The transmission ended. Across human space, billions of people felt the cold touch of fear. The Cran were not some minor threat. They controlled 17 star systems and were actively conquering more. Their military was battle-hardened and ruthless. Humanity had been in space for less than a century. They were strong, but not that strong. Earth's Defense Council met an emergency session. The council chamber was deep beneath Geneva, built to survive almost anything. 30 representatives from across human space gathered around the table. On the main screen was Admiral Kyle Preston, face grim and tired. "We've lost New Boston," he said bluntly. "Yorktown Station was hit 6 hours ago. We evacuated most of the population, but the station itself is gone. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for a major offensive against our core systems." "How many ships do they have?" asked Counselor Amy Rogers. She was young for a counselor, only 42, but she'd earned her position through sharp thinking and diplomatic skill. "Best estimate is 40 capital ships, maybe 200 smaller vessels. They have us outnumbered 3-1. The room fell silent. Those were crushing odds. Human ships were good, their crews well trained, but numbers mattered in space combat. "What about our allies?" someone asked. "The Salian Collective issued a statement of concern," Amy said, her voice bitter. "The Trell Consortium offered their thoughts and prayers. The other major powers are all very worried, but none of them are offering actual help." "Cowards," someone muttered. "Pragmatists," Amy corrected. "The Kraan are dangerous. Nobody wants to make an enemy of them unless they have to. We're on our own." The debate went on for hours. Some wanted to mobilize everything they had and meet the Kraan head-on. Others argued for a defensive strategy, protecting the core worlds and abandoning the frontier. Nobody had a good answer. They were facing an enemy they couldn't beat and allies who wouldn't help. John Harper was on Earth when the summons came. His ship was in dock for repairs after a generator malfunction. Two serious-looking people in government uniforms found him in a cafe near the spaceport. "Captain Harper, you need to come with us. What's this about?" "The Veilith. 4 months ago you rescued one of their people in the Outer Veil." John's stomach dropped. "I filed a report about that." "We know. That report just became very important." They took him to a secure facility where Counselor Amy Rogers was waiting. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Probably she hadn't. "Captain Harper," she said, "tell me about the Veilith you rescued." John told her everything. The destroyed ship, Kelvara's injuries, the warning about the Kraan. When he got to the part about the crystal, Amy's eyes widened. "You still have it?" "In my quarters on the ship. Why?" "Because we're out of options," Amy said simply. "The Kraan are going to destroy us unless we find help. The Veilith might be that help." "The Veilith are pacifists," John said. "Kelvara told me. They don't fight wars. But she said they don't forget kindness. Right now that's all we have." Amy stood up. "We're sending a diplomatic mission to the Veilith homeworld. I want you and your navigator, Lisa Grant, to go with them. You made contact. Maybe that matters. And if they can't help?" Amy's expression was bleak. "Then we fight until we can't fight anymore, and hope we can evacuate as many people as possible before the Kraan reach Earth." The diplomatic ship was called Aurora's Hope. It was small, fast, designed for peaceful missions. Its captain was Commander Peter Cole, a career diplomat with 20 years of experience. He was calm and professional, the kind of person who could negotiate trade agreements in his sleep. Lisa joined John on the ship. She looked worried but determined. "Think the Veilith will remember you?" "I hope so," John said. "Because Amy's right. This is all we've got." They left Earth 3 days later. Behind them, human space was mobilizing for war. Fleets gathered. Civilians were evacuated from frontier worlds. Everyone knew what was coming. The Kraan had promised destruction, and they always kept their promises. The journey to Vela Prime took 2 weeks. During that time, the news from home got worse. Another colony attacked. A supply convoy destroyed. The Kraan were testing human defenses, probing for weaknesses, preparing for their final assault. Peter Cole spent his time preparing for the diplomatic contact. He studied everything known about the Veilith, which wasn't much. They were ancient, peaceful, technologically advanced, but militarily weak. They survived by being neutral, by making themselves useful to everyone and threatening to no one. "What if they say no?" Lisa asked one night. She and John were in the observation deck watching the stars stream past. "Then we go home and fight," John said. "Same as we would anyway. We're going to lose. Maybe, but we'll make them pay for it." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever regret picking up that distress signal? If we just kept going, the Kraan might have left us alone." John thought about it, about Kelvara floating in that ruined ship, dying alone in the dark, about turning away and leaving her there. "No," he said finally. "I don't regret it. Even if it costs us everything, I don't regret helping someone who needed it. That's what makes us different from the Kraan. We don't leave people behind. Even if it gets us killed, even then, They reached Vela Prime on a Tuesday morning, ship time. The planet was beautiful beyond words. Crystalline towers rose from the surface, catching the light of the system's blue sun and scattering it in rainbow patterns. Energy fields shimmered between the structures like aurora lights frozen in place. It looked like a fairy tale, something too perfect to be real. The Velith sent a welcoming message. They were peaceful but cautious. They agreed to meet with the human delegation. As the Aurora's hope descended toward the planet, John felt hope for the first time in weeks. Maybe this would work. Maybe the Velith would help. Maybe humanity would survive this. Or maybe they'd just come all this way to hear a polite no from a species that couldn't afford to make enemies. Either way, they'd know soon enough. The shuttle touched down in a landing bay that gleamed like polished glass. The doors opened, and they stepped out into an alien world carrying humanity's last desperate hope in their hearts. The Velith who greeted them wore robes that seemed to be made from liquid light. There were 5 of them, tall and graceful, moving with a calm that John found almost unsettling. Everything about this place was peaceful. The air smelled like rain and flowers. Soft music played from somewhere, notes that seemed to drift rather than follow any pattern he recognized. "Welcome to Vela Prime," one of them said. The translation came through clearly, though John noticed the Velith's mouth movements didn't match the words. "We are honored by your presence." Peter Cole stepped forward. He'd put on his formal diplomatic uniform, all crisp lines and proper medals. "We're grateful for your hospitality. We've come seeking an audience with your council. The matter is urgent." "We know why you have come," the Velith said. "Kelvara has told us of your kindness. She has told us of your current crisis. Please follow." They walked through corridors that seemed to bend in ways that shouldn't be possible. The walls showed images from across the galaxy. Stars and planets, nebulae and black holes, all of it flowing past like a river of light. John felt small here, in a way he'd never felt even in the vastness of space. The council chamber was a dome that showed the sky above, except the sky wasn't just sky. It showed space itself, the galaxy spinning slowly overhead. 50 Velith sat in a circle, and at the center was Kelvara. She looked healthier than when John had last seen her. The burns were healed. Her eyes were bright. When she saw him, she smiled, and John felt some of his tension ease. At least she remembered him. "Captain Harper," she said, standing. "You came." "Didn't have much choice," John admitted. "Things got bad, we know. We have been watching. The Cran's attacks on your people are unprovoked and brutal. We grieve for your losses." Peter Cole cleared his throat. "With respect, Counselor, we need more than grief. The Cran are preparing a final assault on our core systems. We estimate they'll attack within 2 weeks. Earth itself is at risk. We're asking for help." Another Velith spoke, older than the others, his voice soft but firm. "We are a peaceful people, Captain Cole. We have not waged war in over 8,000 years. We have no army, no battle fleet. What help could we possibly offer?" "Technology," Amy Rogers said. She'd come on the mission too, representing Earth directly. "You're one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Surely you have something that could help us defend ourselves." "We do have technology," Kelvara said, "but sharing it could make us a target. The Krahan are already dangerous. If they see us as a threat, they'll destroy you like they're destroying us," John said bluntly. "Sorry to be harsh, but that's the truth. The Krahan don't stop. Today it's humans. Tomorrow it could be you, or any other peaceful species they decide to target." Silence filled the chamber. The galaxy turned slowly overhead. John could feel the weight of 10,000 years of peace pressing down on this moment. These people had built something beautiful here. They'd created a civilization based on harmony and knowledge, and now he was asking them to risk it all for a species they barely knew. "You saved my life," Kelvara said quietly. "You had no reason to. You gained nothing from it. But you did it anyway, because it was right." She looked around at the other council members. Captain Harper risked his ship and crew for one Velith engineer. "Should we not risk something for an entire species?" "The risk is not equal," another counselor argued. "If we help them, we make an enemy of the Krahan." "We already are their enemy," Kelvara said. "We just haven't admitted it yet. The Kran conquer everyone in their path. Peace only works when both sides want peace. The Kran want only dominion." The debate went on for hours. John and the others waited, listening to arguments in a language that sometimes came through the translators and sometimes didn't. Finally, as the artificial sun began to set, casting long shadows across the chamber, Kelvara stood, I invoke the right of remembrance, she said. Captain Harper's crew saved my life. By our oldest laws, that debt must be honored. I call for a vote. The vote was close. John couldn't follow all the gestures and sounds that made up the Valeth voting process. But when it was done, Kelvara turned to them with something that might have been a smile. Come, she said. There is something you need to see. They followed her deep beneath the planet's surface. The elevator went down for what felt like forever, passing through layers of crystal and stone. When they finally stopped, they were in a chamber so large John couldn't see the far walls. And in the center, floating in some kind of energy field, was a device. It looked like a sphere made of countless smaller spheres, all rotating and orbiting around each other in patterns that hurt to watch. Light pulsed through it, different colors chasing each other through the structure. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. This is the resonance network, Kelvara said, built by our ancestors long ago before we chose peace. What does it do? Lisa asked. It disrupts energy, Kelvara explained. Specifically, it can disrupt the energy systems of ships across entire star systems. Shields fail, weapons go offline, engines stop. Everything that requires power simply ceases to function. Peter Cole's eyes went wide. That's incredible. Why did you stop using it? Because it is too powerful, an older Valeth said, stepping out of the shadows. Too dangerous. In the wrong hands, it could be used not for defense but for conquest. We built this to protect ourselves. But we found that we were becoming the thing we feared. So we stopped. We chose peace instead of power. But you kept it, Amy observed. We kept it, Kelvara agreed, because sometimes peace requires the capacity for war, even if we choose never to use it. We have not activated the resonance network in 8,000 years, but we will activate it now. For you. John felt something twist in his chest, relief and guilt mixed together. Why? Why risk everything for us? Kelvara stepped closer. She was tall, almost 7 feet, and John had to look up to meet her eyes. Because you are the first species in centuries to help us without asking for payment. Because you demonstrated that kindness still exists in this galaxy, and because if the Kran are not stopped, they will eventually come for us too. Better to stand with those who have honor than to fall alone to those who have none. She placed a hand on his shoulder, gentle and warm. There are conditions. We will activate the resonance network once, only once. We will not do it again no matter what happens. This is not an alliance. This is a debt repaid. Use this gift wisely, Captain Harper. Use it to defend, not to conquer. We will, John promised. I swear it. Then let us prepare, Kelvara said. The Kran are coming. When they arrive, they will find that some debts in this galaxy are paid in full. The next few days were a blur of preparation. The Valeth worked with human technicians, explaining how the resonance network functioned. It was incredibly complex, based on quantum entanglement and physics that made even the smartest human scientists scratch their heads. But they didn't need to understand it completely. They just needed to know when and where to activate it. The plan was simple but risky. The resonance network would be activated when the Krahan fleet arrived at New Terra, one of humanity's most important worlds. The Krahan had been moving in that direction. Intelligence suggested it would be their next major target. When they arrived expecting an easy victory, they would instead find their fleet dead in space. Will it hurt anyone? Amy asked. The crews on those ships? No, Kelvara assured her. It only disrupts technology. Living beings are unaffected, though they may be very confused and very angry. Let them be angry, John said. Angry is better than dead. As the Aurora's Hope prepared to leave, carrying the knowledge and coordinates they needed, Kelvara walked with John to the landing bay. Your species is interesting, she said. Young but not foolish. Strong but not cruel. The galaxy needs more species like yours. The galaxy needs more species like yours too, John replied. People who remember that kindness matters. Perhaps together we can remind others, Kelvara said. Go now, save your people, and when this is done, come back and tell me the story. I would like to hear it. I will, John promised. And Kelvara? Thank you. For everything. Thank you, Captain Harper. For showing an old species that the young ones still have much to teach us. The ship lifted off, rising through Vela Prime's perfect sky. John watched the crystalline towers fall away below them. They had what they needed. They had hope. Now they just had to survive long enough to use it. New Terra was beautiful from orbit. It was humanity's first successful colony world beyond the Sol system, home to 40 million people. Cities dotted the continents, lights sparkling against the dark oceans. It looked peaceful, but everyone knew that peace was about to end. Admiral Kyle Preston stood on the bridge of the Defiant, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Around him, the defense fleet waited. 60 human vessels from massive battleships to quick fighters. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. And it wasn't enough. "Sir, we're getting reports from the outer sensors," a young officer said. Her name was Christine Park, and her hands shook slightly as she read the data. Multiple hyperspace signatures. "They're coming. All ships to battle stations," Kyle ordered. His voice was calm, steady. Inside, his heart hammered. "Tell the civilian transports to begin evacuation procedures. This is not a drill." On the planet below, sirens began to wail. Millions of people headed for shelters, for bunkers, for the emergency transport stations. Some would make it off-world. Most wouldn't. There simply wasn't enough time or enough ships. John Harper was on New Terra too. The Wandering Star had been conscripted into civilian evacuation efforts. He and Lisa had spent the last 2 days ferrying people to the outer colonies, making run after run. They were exhausted, but they kept going because what else could they do? "This is going to work, right?" Lisa asked as they loaded another group of refugees. There were families with small children, old people who could barely walk, young couples clutching each other's hands. "All of them terrified. It has to," John said. But he didn't sound convinced. The Kran arrived like a storm. One moment, space was empty. The next, reality tore apart and 43 warships emerged from hyperspace. They were massive, brutal-looking things, all spikes and armor. Each one was easily twice the size of the largest human vessel. On the lead ship, Warlord Thraknor smiled his terrible smile. "There they are. The humans who think they can defy us. Today we teach them the price of defiance." The Krahan fleet moved forward in perfect formation. They'd done this before, conquered dozens of worlds. They knew exactly how this would go. The humans would fight bravely and die quickly. Then the bombardment would begin, and another species would learn to fear the Krahan dominion. Kyle Preston watched them come. His tactical officer was calling out numbers, positions, projected firing solutions. None of it mattered. The Krahan had them outgunned and outnumbered. "This was going to be a slaughter, sir," his communications officer said quietly. Should we surrender? Try to negotiate?" Kyle thought about the ruins of New Boston Colony, about the thousands of dead, about Thraknor's promise to burn every human world. "No, we fight. Even if we lose, we fight. Let them know humans don't die quietly." His crew nodded, scared but determined. That was humanity in a nutshell, scared but doing the right thing anyway. The Kran fleet was almost in weapons range when it happened. Every ship in the Kran armada simply stopped. Their engines went dark. Their weapons powered down. Shield generators flickered and died. Emergency lights came on across the fleet as backup systems tried to activate and failed. 43 warships, the pride of the Kran Dominion, turned into 43 massive pieces of drifting metal. On the Defiance bridge, there was silence. Everyone stared at their screens, trying to understand what they were seeing. "What just happened?" Christine Park whispered. Kyle Preston felt a smile spread across his face. A real smile, the first in weeks. The Valith happened. All ships move in. Boarding crews prepare to take those vessels. Today we show the Kran what happens when you make an enemy of humanity. On the lead Kran ship, chaos reigned. Thraknor roared orders that went nowhere. His crew scrambled to restart systems that refused to respond. Nothing worked. It was as if the ship had simply forgotten how to function. "What is this?" he demanded. "What weapon? What sorcery?" Nobody had answers. The Kran were warriors, conquerors, engineers, but they'd never encountered anything like this. Their technology was good, battle-tested across 100 campaigns. It didn't just stop working. Human boarding parties arrived in shuttles. They cut through the Kran ship's hulls and poured inside. The Kran fought back with whatever weapons they could find. Hand weapons, blades, their own claws and teeth. But they were disorganized, confused, terrified. The humans moved through the ships with grim efficiency, securing corridors and taking prisoners. John Harper was on one of the boarding parties. He'd volunteered because that's what you did. Lisa had wanted to come too, but someone had to fly the ship, and she was better at that than fighting anyway. They moved through the Kran vessel in a 4-person team. The corridors were dark, lit only by emergency lights. Everything smelled like ozone and something sharp that John couldn't identify. They found Crayon crew members huddled in groups, weapons ready but uncertain. "Stand down," John called through his translator. "We're taking this ship. You can surrender peacefully or we can do this the hard way." Most of them chose surrender. They were soldiers, not suicidal. Their ships were dead. Their weapons were basic. The humans had the advantage and everyone knew it. But some fought anyway. Pride maybe, or loyalty, or just the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. John understood that. He might have done the same in their position. They found Thraknor on the bridge. The warlord was massive, even for a Crayon. He stood almost 8 feet tall, covered in ceremonial armor that looked more decorative than functional. His red eyes blazed with fury as the humans entered. "Cowards," he spat. "What weapon is this?" "What trick?" "Not a trick," John said. He was tired, his armor scratched, a bruise forming on his ribs where a Crayon had gotten a good hit in. Just friends helping friends. "You remember the Valith ship you destroyed? The one in the Outer Veil? That was a mistake." "The Valith are weak," Thraknor snarled. "The Valith are smart," John corrected. "And they have long memories. You destroy their people, you make enemies. We helped one of theirs, we made friends. See the difference? They took Thraknor into custody. He fought, of course. Took 4 people to restrain him, and he injured 2 of them before they got him secured. But in the end, he was just another prisoner being led away to the brig. The battle, if you could call it that, was over in 6 hours. Every Crayon ship captured. Most of their crews surrendered. A few died fighting, but not many. The human forces had been expecting to lose everything. Instead, they'd won without firing a single shot. Peter Cole, who'd been coordinating with the Valith, appeared on the main screen in the Defiance bridge. He looked exhausted but triumphant. "Admiral Preston, I'm pleased to report that the resonance network has been deactivated. The Crayon ships will remain offline for approximately another 12 hours before their systems begin to restore. I suggest we use that time productively." "Already on it," Kyle said. "We're stripping weapons and drives from every ship. By the time they get power back, they won't be going anywhere." Down on New Terra, the evacuation stopped. The sirens fell silent. People emerged from shelters, looking up at the sky, hardly daring to believe what they were hearing on the broadcasts. They'd won. Impossible, miraculous, but true. They'd won. Lisa Grant found John in the medical bay. He was getting his ribs checked, the medic muttering about cracked bones and stubborn captains who didn't know when to stay out of fights. "We did it," she said, and her voice cracked with emotion. "We did it," John agreed. He took her hand and squeezed. "We actually did it. What happens now?" "Now?" John thought about Kelvara's words. About using this gift wisely. About defending instead of conquering. Now we show the galaxy who we are. Not by how we fight, but by what we choose to do with our victory. Above New Terra, the captured Crayon fleet drifted silently in orbit. 43 warships that had been sent to destroy humanity, now rendered harmless by an ancient gift from a people who remembered kindness. It was the greatest victory humanity had ever won. And it had been earned not by weapons or strength, but by one act of compassion in the dark reaches of space. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had just proven that sometimes the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy your enemies, it's the willingness to help someone who needs it, even when you have nothing to gain. That lesson would echo across the stars for generations to come. The galaxy talked. That's what galaxies do. News spreads between stars, carried by trade ships and diplomatic vessels, whispered in space stations and shouted in council chambers. And the news of what happened at New Terra spread faster than light itself. The Crayon Dominion was collapsing. Without their fleet, without their warlord, the Empire began to tear itself apart from within. Conquered species rose in rebellion. Crayon commanders fought each other for control of what remained. Systems that had lived under Crayon rule for decades suddenly found themselves free, and they weren't gentle about claiming that freedom. Earth's Defense Council watched it happen with mixed feelings. They'd wanted to stop the Crayon threat. They hadn't expected to trigger the complete destruction of an entire empire. "Should we intervene?" someone asked during a council session. "The Crayon territories are descending into chaos. People are dying." Amy Rogers shook her head. "We don't have the resources to police half the galaxy. And honestly, after what the Crayon did, I'm not sure we should. They conquered those species. Let them sort out their own future." "That seems harsh," another counselor said. "Maybe. But we're not the galaxy's police force. We never asked for that job. What humanity did do was offer help to the refugees. Krahan civilians fleeing the Civil War were given asylum if they wanted it. Medical supplies were sent to worlds suffering in the chaos. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was something, and it was more than anyone expected from the species that had just captured an entire war fleet. The other major powers noticed. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Terra, ambassadors from the Solian Collective arrived at Earth. They came with gifts and smiles and carefully worded proposals for defensive alliances. The Trell Consortium sent their own delegation right behind them. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be humanity's friend. Amy Rogers met with them in the same Geneva facility where they'd debated humanity's survival just weeks earlier. She listened to their proposals with a pleasant smile and careful eyes. "We would be honored to establish mutual defense agreements," the Solian ambassador said. He was tall and elegant with silver skin and 4 arms. "Together, our species could ensure peace and stability across this sector." "Where were you 3 weeks ago?" Amy asked quietly. The ambassador blinked all 4 of his eyes. We were monitoring the situation." "You were monitoring us getting ready to die," Amy said. "You issued statements of concern. You offered thoughts and prayers. But you didn't offer help." "The situation was complex," the Trell ambassador began. She was smaller, covered in fine scales that shifted colors when she moved. The Kran were powerful. To oppose them was to risk war. To oppose them was to do the right thing, Amy corrected. "A species we'd met once, one Valith engineer, helped us because we'd helped her. No alliance. No treaty, no profit, just returning a favor. Meanwhile, species we'd traded with for decades watched us prepare to burn." The room fell silent. The ambassadors looked uncomfortable. Good, Amy thought. They should be uncomfortable. "What do you want from us?" the Solian ambassador asked finally. "Nothing," Amy said. "We're not interested in alliances with people who only value us now that we've proven we can win. If you want to trade, fine. Trade is based on mutual benefit, not trust. But don't pretend we're friends. Friends show up when times are hard, not just when it's convenient." The ambassadors left that day without the agreements they'd hoped for. Some of the Earth Council thought Amy had been too harsh, but most agreed with her. Humanity had learned a hard lesson about who their real friends were. John Harper went back to Vela Prime 2 months after the battle. He brought his crew and he brought gifts. Nothing fancy. Earth wine, chocolate, music recordings, things that represented humanity at its best. Kelvara met them at the same landing bay where they'd first arrived. She looked pleased to see them, her large eyes bright. "Captain Harper, you survived." "Barely," John admitted with a smile. "But yeah, we made it, thanks to you." "Thanks to your kindness first," Kelvara corrected. She led them through the crystal corridors to a garden that somehow existed deep underground. Real plants, real sunlight filtering through from somewhere. It was peaceful in a way that made John's chest ache. They sat and talked for hours. John told her everything. The battle or lack of battle, the capture of the Kran fleet, the collapse of the Dominion. Kelvara listened carefully, asking questions, nodding at certain parts. "You kept your promise," she said when he finished. "You used the gift for defense, not conquest. This pleases us." "A promise is a promise," John said. "Besides conquering people, that's not who we are." "No," Kelvara agreed. "It is not. Your species is interesting, Captain Harper. Young but wise. Strong but compassionate. The galaxy needs more of this." "The galaxy needs more species like yours," John countered. "People who remember that power should be used carefully." Kelvara made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps. But remember, we gave you access to the resonance network once. We will not do so again. This was our debt, repaid in full. If you face another threat, you must face it with your own strength." "I understand," John said. "And honestly, I hope we never need something like that again." "As do I. But just in case." Kelvara pressed something into his hand. Another crystal similar to the first but smaller. "This contains a communication frequency. Not for military help, but if you ever need advice or knowledge or just someone to talk to who remembers when you were kind for no reason, call us. That is what friends do." John felt his throat tighten. Friends, yeah, I'd like that. They spent 3 more days on Vela Prime. Lisa loved the gardens. The crew was fascinated by the Valith technology, though they understood almost none of it. When it was time to leave, Kelvara walked John to the ship one last time. "Your species will change the galaxy," she said. "Already you are changing it." Other young species are watching. They see that kindness can be strength, that helping others can save your own people. This is a good lesson. Let's hope they learn it, John said. The galaxy could use more good lessons. Back on Earth, things were changing. The captured Cran ships were being studied. Some would be kept for defense. Others would be scrapped for their technology. But the biggest change wasn't military, it was philosophical. Humanity had proven itself in battle. Now they had to prove themselves in peace, and that was harder. They established what they called the Humanitarian Corps. Volunteers who would respond to disasters, deliver aid, help species in need. It was inspired by what had saved them. One act of kindness returned when it mattered most. We can't be the galaxy's police, Amy Rogers explained in a broadcast that reached every human world. But we can be the galaxy's helpers. When someone needs us, when we can make a difference, we should try. Not for profit, not for power, but because it's the right thing to do. Some people thought it was naive. Some thought it was beautiful. Most just thought it was very human. John Harper retired from cargo hauling 6 months later. He took a job with the Humanitarian Corps, captaining a relief ship that responded to emergencies across human space and beyond. Lisa came with him. So did most of his old crew. Their first mission was to a small colony that had suffered a reactor failure. Nothing dramatic, just people in need and a ship that could help. When they arrived, the colonists were grateful but confused. "Why help us?" the colony leader asked. "We can't pay you. We have nothing you need." John thought about a Valith engineer floating in a broken ship, about a choice to help someone even when it didn't make sense, about how that one choice had saved billions of lives. "You needed help," he said simply. That's reason enough. The galaxy was watching. It had watched humanity face extinction and survive. Now it watched them use their strength not to conquer but to help. Some species admired it. Some thought it was foolish. But everyone was talking about it. In the grand councils of ancient civilizations, in the markets of trade worlds, in the academies where the young learned about the galaxy's history, humanity became known for something new. Not their weapons or their ships or their stubbornness, though they had all of those in abundance. They became known as the species that never forgot a favor. And more importantly, as the species that gave help first and asked questions later. Years later, a young human student asked John Harper about those days. About the war that almost was, about the Valith, about the choice he'd made in the Outer Veil. "Were you scared?" the student asked. "Terrified," John admitted. "Every day. But you helped anyway." "That's the only time it really matters," John said. "Helping when it's easy doesn't count for much. It's helping when it's hard, when it's scary, when you might lose everything. That shows who you really are." "And who are we?" John smiled. He looked out at the stars, at the galaxy that had learned to respect humanity not for their strength but for their compassion. "We're the people who stop for distress signals," he said, "even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's dangerous, because at the end of the day, leaving someone behind just isn't who we are. And if that choice shook the galaxy a little, well, maybe the galaxy needed shaking." The story of humanity's near destruction and miraculous salvation became legend. But the real story, the one that mattered, was simpler. It was about one captain who chose kindness over caution, about one